Let's bring in Anita Kumar. She's a White House correspondent for McClatchy, and she joins us now from D.C. Good to see you, Anita.
You too.
So the president just returned to Washington last night, but we still have not heard from him. We haven't heard what his position is, what he thinks should happen to Roy Moore moving forward. Any indication at all from the White House how he feels about these allegations, or if he even plans on speaking out?
Well, I think that he was asked about it several times over the 12 days that he was out of the country, and he could easily say that he had other pressing things to deal with, which he did. I think it's going to be very difficult for him not to make a public comment about it, and we're expecting something to happen, but we haven't been given any indication. But we really do have a signal of how he feels. If Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that he's spoken to the president, the vice president, he also spoke to Chief of Staff John Kelly, Donald Trump is on that side, is doing what Mitch McConnell is doing what Donald Trump wants. There's no way that those two are apart on that. Also, we have another indication. You mentioned, I think it was mentioned, that the Republican National Committee is pulling out of that race and not helping Roy Moore. Donald Trump is the head of the party. If he wanted Roy Moore to be supported by the RNC, he would have them be supported by the RNC.
So you think if he does speak, or do you think if he does speak, that he could really sway things here?
Well, I think he could sway things, but the Republicans are really having a hard time here. There's really no good alternative. Alabama officials say that Roy Moore's name will be on the ballot no matter what happens at this point. Even if he withdraws, even if he dies at this point, his name is on the ballot. So, do they want to have a write-in candidate? Then you have two Republicans basically on the ballot, or, they might split the vote and the Democrat might win. So, I mean, it's really a tough call for them at this point. And I think that you're seeing signs that the Republicans are worried that they're going to lose the seat in December when the election comes up.
Although Anita, Lisa Murkowski was a writing candidate in Alaska. It's a much smaller state. She had a very widespread name recognition. Her father was involved in local politics at the state level for many, many years. But I wonder, Mitch McConnell has floated the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who is from Alabama, as a possible writing candidate. And the reason I'm asking about Jeff Sessions is because I'm more curious even about the current state of the relationship between the president and his Attorney General. We know it had cooled over the last couple of months.
Right. I mean, it would definitely be an easy out for Jeff Sessions to say, he's going to go back and run. And, obviously he and the president have not gotten along at certain points.
He could say it's for the good of the party. He could say, this is one way to retain the seat. I've got widespread name recognition. Mr. President, I appreciate, serving in your administration, but some things are bigger than this, right?
I have to tell you, though, everyone who's close to Jeff Sessions says there's no way he wants to do it. He held that seat for a long time. He's moved on. He clearly has talked about how much he enjoys being Attorney General. He wants to keep the job. A few months ago when the president was, publicly criticizing him, berating him on Twitter, he made it clear, even with all that going on with the president, he still wanted to keep that job, and I don't think anything's changed. But you are correct. I mean, the Republicans would definitely need someone with really good name recognition like Jeff Sessions.
So on the policy front, Anita, we've learned that the Senate Republicans plan to attach the repeal of the Obamacare mandate, the mandatory mandate, the mandate that you have to get Obamacare. They're attaching it to their tax plan. This is something that the president has tweeted about. He tweeted about it earlier this week. But I wonder, what can you tell us about how important this is to him? I know that, the House Republicans chose not to include that component in their version of the tax bill because they thought it would complicate things too much. Does the president want to see that as part of the tax bill?
I think he really does want to see it. It's a huge win if they get it for two reasons. I mean, one, obviously, they've been trying to repeal and replace Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and this is a key component of it. So they could say they have a win on tax reform and health care. So they would really love to do that. But also, remember, there's some issues with tax reform. They're afraid they're not going to get the votes because they don't have the money to pay for it. And repealing this piece of it would give them the money. And so they think they'd have a better chance. But it's a very risky move. Remember, twice now before, they have not been able to pass something that would do this, repeal this individual mandate. So, I mean, it's touchy. Several Republicans have said they're not sure that they would vote for it.
Anita, before we let you go, let me ask you about a tweet from the president this morning. You mentioned that he's been on this trip to Asia, that he's been very busy. He doesn't have time, or he hasn't had the time to weigh in on what's happening in Alabama with Roy Moore. But the president does have the time to tweet this. Do you think the 3 UCLA basketball players will say, "Thank you, President Trump"? They were headed for 10 years in jail. Your take. I mean, what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, if you haven't been following the story, there were these basketball players that were facing charges in China. The White House clearly stepped in and helped them get released. I think the charges were basically pushed to minor charges, misdemeanor charges, and they were released. And so I think the president and the White House have already gotten the credit. The conference that the school is involved in put out a statement thanking the president, thanking the White House. They've spoken on the phone with the players. I mean, I think that the credit is already there, but, you know, this is Donald Trump, and he often likes to get even more credit. So I think it was pretty typical, but I think everyone was pretty clear that the White House helped them get home.
Well, they're going to be talking a little later on today.
Right.
I'm sure they'll have something very nice to say.
But it is just interesting that I think by this point everybody gets it. Supporters and those who are not so supportive of the president understand that the president of the United States, this particular president, likes to receive praise. He wants people to thank him. But there are some things that you do as president that are the things that you do because you are the leader of the free world, and in helping American citizens abroad to the extent that you can, the president doesn't get involved in every one of these situations. Right. By the very nature of the act of the president getting involved in this would suggest that, of course, they're going to be very grateful.
Right. I mean, it's just like he can't help himself. I mean, you heard from the White House that the Chinese president, clearly China knew about the issue, but the Chinese president didn't know about it until the president brought it up. I mean, clearly he was instrumental. He made this happen, and it was to his benefit also. He didn't want it to become an international incident as he went to China. But, of course, he was responsible for it, and I think people have already thanked him.
All right, we'll see. Let's see what happens when they do that press conference.
Sure.
2 o'clock. Anita Kumar in Washington, always great to have you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.